You're listening to Online Pet Health Webinar Podcasts with your host, Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinary and rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealthwebinar.com.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Megan Kelly. Today we're doing another Behind the Vet Rehab practice, and we've got Kristin Hagler from Golden Gate Canine and Guide Dogs for the Blind in California. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you, Megan. It's wonderful to be speaking today with everyone.
It's so great to have you on the show because we actually go way back, don't we? Back into 2005 at the University of Tennessee.
Yes, we go way back in Tennessee. That is correct.
Gee, that seems like a long time ago now.
It does, but it felt like it also just happened.
Yeah. And what is awesome is that Kristin and I actually kept in contact for a few years, and then we lost contact, and which was wonderful. When I started Online Pet Health, we made contact again. So it was so great to connect with you again, and it was obviously awesome to have you on the podcast. Kristin, I know that you do quite a lot of things, so I thought we'd actually just start off, just mentioning that you, like me, are a vet tech or vet nurse, yes. And that was actually what you originally did, didn't you?
Well, so yes, it was in a way. I had set my sights on early on that I was going to be a veterinarian. I had always known that I wanted to work with animals, and so I started my career working towards that goal. But early on, when I was doing all the prerequisites to get into veterinary school in high school, I started working at Guide Dogs for the Blind, doing a lot of volunteering, and that's where I really fell in love with the veterinary nursing and technician aspect of the work. So my career path kind of took a little sideways on that direction because I really like that hands-on care with the animals.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, I actually started off doing veterinary nursing, which I completed, and then I went off and did veterinary science, and then I went and did my CCRP. So yeah, Kristin and I have that connection. So what actually attracted you then to get into canine rehabilitation? Was it through working with the guide dogs that you sort of changed your course?
Yes, it was for sure. Because when I was a volunteer, at the time in the veterinary department, we had, probably 5 or 6 dogs of various stages. Some of them were guides that were paired with a visually impaired person that had a knee surgery, and they were residing in the veterinary department and they needed care. So being a volunteer, I was given the opportunity to care for these dogs, and I fell in love with caring for them. And I just learned so much with the intimate hands-on with the post-op orthopedic things that I wanted to know more. And I'm a long-term athlete myself, so I knew that there had to be more when you injure yourself as an athlete because, these working dogs, they are sort of athletes, that I just started investigating what more could be done for them. And I just happened to stumble on the University of Tennessee program, just doing searches for what could be done. And then it kind of just took off from there.
And so what work are you doing now? So you do a few different things, don't you?
Yes. I do a lot of work. I still am at Guide Dogs for the Blind 1 day a week. And then I have a consulting business that I go to veterinary hospitals and talk with the veterinarians about different options for the pets. I do have a shockwave machine from PulseVet that if they would like to have that as an option in their vet clinic, we can bring that in for them. And I also work in a general practice managing the rehabilitation department 3 days a week. So that's just the actual physical work stuff. And then there's all the extracurricular things that I somehow stumble upon. So I keep myself busy.
Yeah, because Onlinepethealth is a platinum sponsor of the AP RVT, which you are obviously very much involved in. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how it all started? And if there are any listeners, that we have listeners from all over the world, they might be interested in what you guys are doing there.
Yes. The Academy of Physical Rehabilitation Veterinary Technicians, which I always joke when I'm speaking, is that in our specialty, we have the longest tongue-twisting words to say. So the AP RVT, it's an academy that's recognized by NAVTA, which is in the United States, the National Association of Veterinary Technicians in America, as a veterinary technician specialty. And we've joined the 16 other specialties, ranging from emergency and critical care to behavior to dentistry. And what that is a way for veterinary technicians and nurses to show that they have mastered an expert level of skills and knowledge working in their veterinary hospitals alongside the veterinarians to really continue their career path as veterinary technicians. And there are several applicants, not yet quite for the AP RVT because this is only our second application cycle year, but there are other applicants from other countries that are veterinary technician specialists in other specialties. So that's pretty awesome that there's interest, worldwide for this kind of stuff to continue and advance our knowledge as veterinary technicians and nurses.
Yeah, I mean, here in South Africa, we don't really have vet nurse or vet tech specialists. So the rehabilitation is actually the first field that I know of that vet techs or vet nurses can do extra study in and have another sort of qualification. So it's probably the only speciality we have here. But it's so interesting you say there are actually 16 different specialities.
Yes, the emergency and critical care has, I believe, been around for 16 years. They were the first one to be accepted, and they're the largest one.
Sure. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about the rehab practice. So that you do 3 days that you're managing there.
Yeah.
Is it how many therapists are there? Is it just you, or do you have other people working with you there?
It is myself and a veterinary assistant. So we are a department of 2.
Okay. So how do you guys manage things? Is it just open 3 days a week, or are you just only there 3 days a week and your colleague is there on the other days?
We are there. I am there 3 days a week. We have the option, if we have enough patients, to come in on a 4th day for the colleague to do what we call fitness patients that, I have evaluated, and we've worked with the owners to set up a fitness program. And these pets are ones that don't need any medical attention or anything like that. While my assistant is very, very skilled, it's most appropriate. I'd like to be there for all of them to make sure things are going well. So most of the time it's the two of us, the 3 days a week.
Okay, so you are a practice manager as well. So you're managing everything yourself.
Not quite that title, but I'd say the department manager, because we work. The department, is within a general veterinary practice. So there's still regular things happening at the practice as well.
So you mentioned the shockwave, that you had shockwave. What other equipment have you got?
I have a therapeutic laser. I have a class 3B.
Okay.
And I've had that for probably almost 10 years now, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, it's great to be able to have that versatility because I have moved from clinic to clinic, just for various reasons, mostly personal with the children, So it's been nice to be able to go to another practice and, bring something very valuable to them.
Okay, so it's actually that's your equipment and you move with it.
Correct.
Okay. And do you guys offer hydrotherapy?
We do have hydrotherapy. That is very, very popular for the families when they're requesting for rehabilitation services. Although I always like to tell people it is not a required therapeutic modality for pets. As a practice, it is something that definitely helps drive people to the practice for rehabilitation therapy because that's what the pet families are looking for.
And is that a pool or underwater treadmill?
We have an underwater treadmill, yes.
Okay, great. And you might not know this, but one of the things obviously for most vet rehab therapists is that initial sort of financial outlay.
Yes.
Did the practice that you work for, were they able to finance it, or did they pay cash for it? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I believe they financed it is what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very nice. It was a good an investment. And, I've been in 3 out of the 2 veterinary practices over the last 10 years that I've been in. The 2 of them, they were the ones that have financed the underwater treadmills. The first one, I wasn't really there long enough to really develop that program. But the practices have seen the value in purchasing an underwater treadmill, and the return on investment of it, it's been very, very good for them to do that.
Yeah, I must say, I don't think I've actually seen a practice that hasn't said that there's a good return on investment for an underwater treadmill. And most practices are thinking about buying a second one. So after,
correct,
6 months to 1 year, they realize how busy they are, and they think, well, maybe I need another one.
Yes, and that's definitely a limiting factor on how many patients you can see and how you structure your appointments as well.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any advice about sort of different ways in which you've structured your appointments, and maybe things that you've changed, things that worked, things that didn't work?
Yes. Originally, and ideally, we would like the pet parents to stay for the visits. But as we got busier and busier, the wait list just got longer and longer, because we can only see one pet and family in the gym, we call it, at a time. So what we ended up doing was offering appointment times where the pet parents would drop off the pet, if appropriate. The pet's not stressed, and they do well without their parent there, and the parent's very confident with the program that's happening. And then they can kind of take a break, go get coffee, read a book, which they often find very nice, because they're so invested and involved in their pets that it's almost like they get a sigh of relief that they can leave their pet with somebody that they trust for a short period of time and have some me time, which is very important for the pet parents to have. So we have a blend of drop-off model, appointment stay, the pet parents stay, and that seems to work quite well. And on a very busy day, just for the 2 of us, we can see up to 18 patients in a day of, varied exercise gym time duration between like 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of patients.
Yes,
I think one of the biggest struggles vet rehab therapists have when they are that busy is writing down their notes, and they end up, sitting at the end of the day having to quickly catch up.
Yes.
Do you have a system where you can write your notes, or is that the case with you, right at the end of the day, scribbling and trying to remember what you did?
We try very hard not to do that model because it's very difficult. Of course, all best intentions, that does happen on occasion. But first thing in the morning, the first job of the rehabilitation assistant is to come in and to get all of the templates ready to go for the pets that are going to be seen for the day. Then when I come in, I can quickly go through them, flag things that need to be followed up on. And so we can kind of flow through the day. We also have a whiteboard next to each patient's name that's written up there, so we can jot down quick little notes of how fast they were walking, how long, and if anything weird happened, or if we have any follow-up that we need to do for them, so we don't forget by the last patient of the day. Because it's a lot. There's a lot of details, and there's a lot of conversations that happen with the families. And, you want your medical records to be very accurate. So writing things down throughout the day is very important. We've also tried a little whiteboard directly next to the treadmill, but that didn't work too well because there's water there, your hands get wet, and then things get smeared and stuff. So using the whiteboard and having one of us, between the 2 of us, write things down as we go seems to help quite a bit, so we can be pretty accurate with the records.
Yeah, I love that idea of the whiteboard, because you know how it is, in one day you'll have like 4 different cruise ships, and then you're trying to remember, what you did with what and what the one said, and especially when they all Labradors and they might be with you because of the guide dog. So
yes,
trying to remember which one's which.
Right. I also find it's nice to have a big at a glance, of who's coming in at what time, so you can just keep glancing at it. If I had an electronic whiteboard, that would be great. But, the computer, we're not set up that way. So if we could upgrade, I would go to an electronic whiteboard so you could just see it all the time. You'd have to figure out a different way of taking notes, but
yeah. All right, great. Those are some great tips for people. So one of the things that often comes up, and especially for those new grads, so the people that have just graduated as vet rehab therapists, is, how to make their next move. So do they get a job? Do they become mobile? Do they rent some space within a veterinary practice, or do they open up their own separate rehab practice? And so I wanted to ask, obviously you're now running a vet rehab practice within a veterinary hospital. What is it like with your referrals? Are you getting referrals only from the vet hospital, or are you finding that other practices in your area are referring to you too?
Well, so that's a very interesting question. So that's where I find my experience being in different locations to be very helpful, because when I was in one location, for the hospital, we had so many veterinarians referring to the practice in that region, and the number of clients that were self-referring was not as high. But when I moved to this current location that I'm at, it has kind of flip-flopped, and the clients are the ones that are self-referring, and the veterinarians in the region are not referring as much. And it's one of those things I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it is, but it's something to be noted that the demographics might be part of it. The activities of the animals that are that the parents are participating with them out in the area. There's a lot more outdoor stuff in the current place that I'm at, whereas in the previous one it was not as outdoor. So more urban. So I don't know what it was, but it's something to note. When you're trying to decide how do I get started, you need to know your region. What kind of things that the pet parents are doing, how many specialty hospitals there are in the area. If you are going to go try and look for a veterinary practice, just a general practice, how much space do they have for you? Is there room to expand when you do get busy? Because I always say real estate in a vet clinic is always so coveted, and you don't want to get stuck in a small space and end up getting frustrated.
Yeah, and then you have no room to expand. Tell me, is your entrance, do you have a separate entrance, or do you go through the main vet practice?
We do, yes. Our patients, they do come through the main vet practice. We do have an option, though, for some of the pets that maybe have a lot of fear and anxiety going through the front door, to exit and enter through a side entrance. But we try and not use that as much, because there's no gatekeeper, we call it, as a receptionist to greet the client. So most of them come through the front door.
I think, in my experience, I rented a building that was right next to a veterinary practice. So I wasn't associated with it. I had my own entrance. And initially, there was the vets were quite hesitant to refer. I got quite a lot of feedback, being a vet myself. Luckily, I knew a lot of them. And, I think one of the things that they worry about is that, they refer a patient for rehabilitation, and then the patient just suddenly starts going to the other veterinary hospital.
Correct.
So I think that's one of the things that they worry about, that they're going to lose their patient.
I would totally agree with you. So for starting out and establishing a very firm process of how things work with referrals, even having a kind of an agreement available for the veterinarian to that says that I, the rehabilitation therapist, promise and swear up and down that I will not be doing any of these general medicine services unless they are critical for your pet, that they're in danger or whatever. That they will be referred back to you, so you can maintain that relationship with them as the family veterinarian, because they do know them the most. They've often seen them since they were puppies or kittens even. So that's really important to maintain that relationship, because I find that a lot of general general veterinarians, they just don't understand rehabilitation medicine. And so they may be hesitant to refer. So even going out and just talking with them, giving them a short little continuing education seminar or, a couple flyers is very important to help educate them. And also talking with the front office staff, the customer service representatives, because they're the people that are answering the phones and getting the questions. And if they're armed with a bunch of information, then they can help educate everyone in the end. I always say they're the pillar that we all kind of feed off of.
So, yeah, I mean, it's always challenging, all these different things that we have to think about as a vet rehab therapist. But I think, no matter what you do, wherever you choose, whether you go in with a practice or you create your own, you always find a way for it to work. And I think, most of the vets do realize that what we're doing is very different. And if you have the principle that, that you only do the things that you are going to do and you refer back to the referring veterinarian for other care, then they usually accept it. And I must say, for me, once I had established myself, I had lots of vets referring, no problem, despite the other veterinary practices being right next to me.
Exactly. Yes. Once you've got that trust built up with them, it'll just happen. And it's actually kind of probably a little bit of a relief for those referral veterinarians, because they have another option to present to their clients, so that they can, look like that they are on the forefront of medicine, and that they can provide options for those families.
Exactly. So let's go on to some things that are not so serious. Let's chat a little bit. So you told me about you being a bit of an athlete. So I wanted to know, with all the things that you do, and I know that you've got kids, how do you have time to do that? What are your hobbies? How do you juggle, family life, work life, and having time for doing sports?
It's a very good question. Sometimes I don't know the answer, but yes, when I was in college, I played volleyball, which was very fun. But I transitioned now, and I took up Taekwondo, which actually my children do as well. So we have a family, we go several times a week, and that's our family time where we all do the sport together. So that's kind of a fun thing. So it saves time, taking them to a different sport where I'm not participating maybe. But before I joined doing Taekwondo, I was dropping them off and, in the car working on a paper or something like that. So it's really finding that balance of time between, what you enjoy and what needs to get done. And I thankfully have a lot of family around as well. I do say that if I didn't have all this fringe family around, that I would not be able to achieve everything that I'm doing right now. So I love what I do. So often the extracurricular stuff, it is involved sort of work related. But I love it so much that I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So, but I do definitely take time for myself and just sit and watch cartoons and drink coffee on the couch. Try and make a point to do that, have family movie nights and stuff like that. It is very important, to set up boundaries for yourself so you can maintain that good work-life balance, because it can get very overwhelming and you can just keep saying yes and yes and yes. And then you just have a mound of paperwork. So, I've been asked to, work more days a week, and, you have no more room for patients. And while, I may not be physically working in a veterinary hospital on my day off during the week, I'm doing things for me. So I've, just set that firm boundary of, no, I need to do things on my day off for me. And that's helped quite a bit.
And what you haven't mentioned is all the lecturing that you do, because Kristin is actually a lecturer for Onlinepethealth. So she's writing, doing PowerPoint presentations and writing lectures. And so there's a lot of other things that you haven't mentioned of all the things that you juggle.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do somehow find time for that. So, we put on movies, and, I set a timer, and I only have a certain amount of time to work on a project, while the kids are, say, watching a movie or doing or at a friend's house or something like that. So yes, it does take a lot of time to prepare for lectures and do all the writing and everything. But it's just finding that balance and what works best for you so you can get things achieved. And I am the preparer much ahead of time. So I have things done well in advance, because if they get closer to a deadline, I stress out.
Well, I know that you're always very organized for lectures, and I think you've got one coming up towards the end of the year, which we're really looking forward to. It's a hydrotherapy one, am I right?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, that is correct.
Awesome, Kristin. Thank you so much for your time. I know, you're rushing, trying to drop kids off at school. So another thing, me putting pressure on you to come on the podcast, but it's been so great talking to you. And thank you for all your tips and advice for everyone. And we're so looking forward to your lecture later on this year on Online Pet Health.
Yes, that's wonderful. I'm glad that we could make this work out today. And I've really enjoyed working with Online Pet Health and the opportunities that you've given the members of the Academy, the AP RVT, to help learn doing speaking and writing and blogging and all of that stuff. It's very important for people to be able to have that opportunity. So we thank you a lot.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Have an awesome day, Kristin.
You too. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye. For more information on continuing education opportunities for veterinary rehabilitation therapists, please go to www.onlinepethealthwebinar.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss out. I'm Dr. Megan Kelly on the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast. Bye for now.